black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Smokey Johnson, and for those of you who are new to this program, the Umoja Circle is an African-centered talk show where we correct errors where errors is found, and we introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. And I can't think of a better show right now than the person I'm going to introduce to a lot of people, especially since this is February and Black History Month. And one of the things that Carter G. Woodson wanted to emphasize about Black History Month that maybe a little unknown fact is that I hear people talk about I celebrate Black history 365 days a year, and basically that's what we do on this show. But believe it or not, that was the intent of Carter G. Woodson. In his own writings, he said that he intended for people to study their history throughout the year and used Black History Week to, express what they learned the previous year. So that's his intent, and I tried to keep that up with the show. Who am I talking about today? And this gentleman right here, this great scholar, and he fits into what I've been doing with the last couple of months about introducing the audience to great African thinkers or African thinkers throughout the diaspora. And this book has influenced so many people. Some of you might have heard of it, The Destruction of Black Civilization, or some of you might not. But this is Dr. Chancellor Williams. He was born in 1898 in Bentonville, South Carolina. He's the son of, again, just like a lot of great scholars who did not have the opportunity in enslavement and in segregating America. He had enslaved parents. This brilliant mind then went on to get his bachelor's degree in education and his master's degree in history from Howard University, and then his PhD from American University in D.C. He also did time researching at Oxford University, the University of London, the preeminent University of Chicago Oriental Institute, which is the preeminent for Egyptologists in the world, and the University of Ghana. So again, this is another one of those brilliant minds I want to introduce you to. But he's best known for his seminal work, I think that came out in 1971, and that this book here that I have. Okay, I do my research. I don't introduce you to something that I don't study, and that's the destruction of African civilization from 4500 BC to 2000 AD. All right, it took him 16 years to do this. 16 years to do this research. But just like any other brother, he had struggled with economics. With financing. He also said that the miracle wasn't that he finished the book. The miracle was that he got it published. And it's a critique. This is a well-researched critique of what went wrong for African people on the continent of Africa. You know, how they had these great empires thousands of years before there was even a Europe. And then here we are, not even knowing our past. And that's why I want to reintroduce you to this book and to this person. He has another book out that is the Rebirth of African Civilization, but I'll talk about that. I have it here, but I'll talk about that at another time. But first I want to introduce you to who I am again. But I want to introduce you to, again, my name is Smokey Johnson, and the purpose of this Umoja Circle is to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to us again. But I have this video I want to show of a rare video, I think done in the 1980s, of an interview by Tony Brown on this great man, Dr. Chancellor Williams.
We were told, quite to the contrary, that we were from a land of savages, of cannibals. And except by the grace of God and the white man, we would have been a lost people. So we should be on our knees forever praying and thanking God that we were brought, even in slavery, to this land to escape the horrors of Africa. And this was brought in and drilled into us generation after generation.
Africa, the second largest continent, is an area of almost 12 million square miles in size. It is comprised of 50 independent countries and populated by over 537 million people who speak over 1,000 languages and dialects. For eons, Africa's wealth has been a magnet that has attracted the entire world. The continent has been plundered for its vast mineral and human resources. Traditional historians have viewed this land as one of primitive savages who slept through the millennia, contributing little to the cultural legacy of mankind. The facts, however, tell a different story. Scholars and scientists now concede that Africa is the birthplace of mankind. Africans were the first builders of civilization. They discovered mathematics, invented writing, developed sciences, engineering, medicine, religion, fine arts, and built the Great Pyramids, an architectural achievement which still baffles modern science. What caused the cradle of the world's oldest and greatest civilizations to crumble, leaving in its wake a people who are exploited, oppressed, and economically underprivileged? In a moment, Africa's downfall.
Tony Brown's Journal is brought to you by Pepsi-Cola Company and your local Pepsi bottlers.
Dr. Williams, it's an honor being able to meet with you and to talk with you. You have written what many of us consider to be the definitive work about the culture of Africans throughout the world, and you approach it from the standpoint of the destruction of that civilization. Why did you choose the aspect of destruction rather than some other point of view?
The aspect of destruction was emphasized for the reason that it was quite clear that the black people in America seemed to be generally unaware that they had a history, that they were told that they had achieved nothing. They were told...
This man says the true facts are to be found in a more thorough and honest look at history. After Dr. Chancellor Williams, a native of Bennettsville, South Carolina, received his doctorate in history and sociology, he studied psychology, anthropology, archaeology, and economics. He also taught Arabic history and worked as a professor of history at Howard University for 29 years. He won an award from the Black Academy of Arts and Letters and was the first recipient of the 21st Century Foundation's Clarence L. Holt Prize for Excellence in Literature.
Now, of course, the record was there to show that much of Western civilization was built upon the foundation of the land where civilization itself had begun, and this was in Africa. Therefore, the focus had to be on Africa to see to what extent the recent revelations with the turn of the century, at the turn of the century, that Africa was the cradle of civilization. To what extent could this be actually verified? And so my work was directed in the uncovering much of what had been lost, much of what had been disguised, much of what had been stolen, refurbished, reworked, and presented to Western civilization as the work brought from Africa, but presented to Western civilization as the creation of Western man.
Dr. Chancellor Williams spent 16 years writing his book, and although a piece of extraordinary research, he considered it a greater miracle that he was able to get it published. Plagued by a chronic lack of funds and turned down by his academic associates and all other sources, Dr. Williams mortgaged his home. Then another obstacle arose. Due to his rapidly failing eyesight, he was forced to abandon his earlier plans for an expanded 3-volume work and had to settle for a condensed version of his research into a single volume, the book we now know as The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD.
What did you find out about ancient African civilizations?
Well, to begin with, I found out that ancient African civilization was, first of all, the beginning of civilization. I found out that there could be no record found anywhere that antedates the advanced civilization of Africa. And this was the finding of European and other scholars. And they were now gradually admitting it, and when the evidence became overwhelming, the question arose, could Africans have achieved all this? Could Africans have achieved this remarkable work in architecture that could be traced back for thousands of years before Christ, before Western civilization had even started? Could Africans have done this? Could Africans have achieved this high advance in mathematics, in physics, in chemistry, in medicine, and so forth? I mean, many of the things we now glorify as modern. Take the Washington Monument, for example, which is an exact duplication of ancient African architecture, which is well known. And most of the columns we see on these stately columns on buildings, which the Greeks, in studying in Africa, are borrowed from the Africans, remodeled them at Doria, at Corinth, and so forth, gave these columns the name of the cities in which they remodeled them, and gave them a Greek character. They really didn't do much changing. They merely removed the African, the campus leaf at the column, and modified, but otherwise it was substantially the same as African.
Dr. Williams, were there ever laws and rules that governed the entire continent of Africa?
There were laws and rules that governed the entire continent in the same sense that you have the same system of laws and rules that which govern a whole people without the same time having a single government, a single state spreading over a whole continent, the second largest in the world. In other words, I'm saying that while Africa, in contradistinction to being a country, was the second largest continent on earth, and while the African people at one time in history occupied the whole continent, and while they were one people in their general culture, in their general religion, with certain modification, in their general social laws, in their general legal system, right on down the line, in almost every avenue you could find that there was this kinship. The only thing that they fundamentally different, or where they fundamentally differed, was where, of course, when they divided up and formed separate states, or withdrew, or to form separate societies, and develop different languages from the segmentation or separation from what had been a larger language group, so that there's no problem at all in understanding that you had one people occupying the continent without being under one single state.
Dr. Williams, based on your research of history, is it accurate that democracy was born in Greece?
No, democracy was not born in any one place. The record, as I indicate in this discussion on the chapter dealing with the African Constitution, birth of democracy, meaning birth of democracy in Africa, I made it quite clear that democracy was a system that was natural among the ancient peoples in all stages of development. Even the most primitive societies had their chiefs generally elected, and the chiefs were generally subject to the will of the group. So it was nothing unusual about the head of the society being subject to the will of the tribe, which was one of the early forms of social organization. The family, the clan, the tribe, the nation. This is the progressive step. So that in Africa, you will find that back from times immemorial, they had their own system of democracy. And it was this same system which could be found in every part of the African continent. The same fundamental laws, the same fundamental custom. No matter whether they were 5,000 miles apart, no matter whether the group had never come across the other group, they had the same system. That's why we know that we were dealing with substantially one people. So that democracy then was so long, so many thousands of years before Greece, that the mention of Greece in connection with where democracy began could only bring smiles to the face of any scholar who has really studied world history.
Welcome back. I hope you got some insights on this man. He was in his 90s. He died at the age of 98 in 1992. And it's a shame that many of you who went through college, who went through primary school, didn't get to know about this and were never taught about this man, but that's what I'm doing here. He mentioned in the video, if I can remember, that there was this atmosphere during the 17 and 1800s in which this idea that people of African descent did nothing, or the concept of the dark continent, or the concept of black people, they're the reason why we enslaved that. That's what all this kind of racist ideology that still permeates the world today, especially here in America, if you listen to some of the Republicans or some of the white supremacists who are now, instead of being on the extreme, they're now the center of the political world today. I want to show you some slides here of people who you might have read about in college or studied or put on high pedestals, but look how they thought about people of African descent. And that's why Chancellor Williams made it his life work to disavow these thoughts with a 16-year research. This is Arnold Thornby, a so-called famous historian that you most likely came across in college or maybe in high school in some advanced course. When he said, when we classify mankind by color, the only one of the primary races which has not made a creative contribution to any of our 21 civilizations is the black race. Really? Again, let's go to the next one. David Hume, you heard of him, philosopher. I am apt to suspect the Negroes to be naturally inferior to the whites. There never was a civilized nation of any other complexion than white, nor even any individual eminent either in action or speculation, no ingenious manufacturers among them, no arts, no science. These are the people that we hold in high esteem, that the educational system, and even today, we still hold on. This is how they think about the people that looks like me and many of you out there. Let's go on. I want to John Burgess, who is another scholar. A black skin means membership in a race of men which has never created a civilization of any kind. There's something natural in the subordination of an inferior race, even to the point of enslavement of the inferior race. This is what we had to deal with. Okay, really up until the 1960s, my lifetime and many of your lifetime, when laws were put in place that said that you cannot say those things, but people still thought it. When you have 200 or 300 or 400 years of thinking that way, and you're going to tell me you're going to educate us in another way, this is something that one of the reasons I did the Umoja Circle, one of the reasons the Carter G. Wood has established Black History Week at the time in 1926, and he insisted that we study our history, that we are more than just enslaved people or more than how these people think. You think only some of these philosophers? This is the great Benjamin Franklin, who we epitomize here in America. Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies, or increasing the lovely white and red, okay? Thomas Jefferson, President of the United States, said, I advance it therefore as a suspicion only that the blacks, whether originally or distinct race or made distinct by time or circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowment of both body and mind. Okay? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Really? Who own 256 of our people. To justify that, that's the kind of thinking. This is the kind of environment, milieu, that we as people of African descent for hundreds of years, since our kidnappings during the 15th and 16th and 17th, and in some cases the 1800s, had to deal with. And this is the environment. And you wonder why race is an issue in America? Why we still have these problems? That's why this book is a well-researched critique of what went wrong. Why could we as people of African descent who had these great empires that I'll talk about in the next show, part 2 of this, why did we have these type of problems? Where we had these countries like England, and France and Spain and all these European countries that by the 1400s, before even Columbus let out, they just came out of their own dark age. All right, in 1492, Isabella came out, kicked out the Islamic Arabs and the Moors that were in the Iberian Peninsula of Portugal and Spain for over 700 years, who brought bathing, who brought medicine, who brought art to Europe and the Europeans. And they just came out of that, and they were influenced, especially Portugal, by the stories not of Asia, like we're told in school, but about Africa and the wealth. And one of the episodes that brought this type of interest to the courts of Europe was what happened with Mansa Musa and his great Hajj across the Sahara, where he distributed about 18 tons of gold. Okay, one of the richest, and he came from the Empire of Mali. Okay, the same place that these gentlemen I showed you earlier said that we did not have any empire, did not have any wealth, did not introduce anything to the world. Such lies that we had to do is the foundation of the educational system. That's how it started. That's what they taught us. And when the stories of after Mansa Musa, which was a good story to show the wealth, but it also focused Europe on Africa. That's where they were testing these boats that went across the Atlantic. They went up and down the coast of West Africa. First, they went for trade. That's what Dr. Williams was talking about in the video. He said first they would come and say, hey, just let us set up a couple of forts for trading along the borders. And then they would do things to manipulate whoever was in government. If you got a weak king or a strong king, you would do things to manipulate. We still do that today in Africa today. America did that during the Cold War in all these other countries in which they wanted their influence and to benefit from. Europe did it during the colonial times. And we'll talk about that. And all these things affected that great continent of Africa to this very day. That's what I want to let you know, and that's why I introduced you to this great book. There were so many people influenced like that. The great psychiatrist who wrote his seminal work was based on the work of Dr. Chancellor Williams. He stayed alive and was with us for 98 years before he became an ancestor, and many of you do not even know who this man is. And we're still having the kind of discussion that his research has already proven. Just like the last month, I showed Sheikh Anta Diop, who proved that the ancient Egyptians were black. That's already been done by his work. Or that the fact that black people have been coming across the Atlantic and interacted with native people here going back to 1200 or 900 BC. That great empires in Africa existed before there was even a Europe. And we got to understand this thing. I just want to let you know that there's more to history than just dates and times. If you don't know what's happened in the past, you won't be able to understand why we act the way we do in the present moment and make the best kind of decisions that will affect us into our future. So until the next show, which I'll continue on this topic, I hope you enjoyed what you learned. Happy Black History Month. To the power of our ancestors. Peace, Hotep. Bye-bye.